name is Sherry Abiam. I will be your MC this afternoon. I'm associated with the American Association of University Women. We are one of 3 sponsors for this forum. The other 2 sponsors that I'd like to thank are the Little Lake Grange and the Mendocino Women's Political Coalition, also known as MWPC. I would like to start by saying some thank yous because there were a lot of people that participated in putting this together. And this is in no particular order. I'd like to thank Mike Burgess from KLLG Radio. I'd like to thank Terrence Vaughn. He's from Mendocino TV. He is video recording this. The video can be seen at www.mendocinotv.com. Also video recording this is our Andy Wright and Al Rosen. Their recording can be seen on Public Access TV, Channel 3 on Comcast, or you can go to YouTube or Vimeo and type in Willits Community Television in order to bring the video up. I'd like to thank Dave Knutson, who is doing the sound for our forum. A big thank you to Jeremy Whitaker for setting up this room. A lot of sweat involved in doing that. Taking questions from the audience. Ann McGlinty, and we'll be doing that if you have cards that you picked up from the audience. And Emmy Good? Emmy Good will be wandering around. Okay. And here, organizing the questions at this table, to my right, to your left, are Carlin Diamond and Judy Burtis. Our timer is Carol Orton. And so with that, let's begin. We have 3 panels this afternoon, the 3rd panel being our 3rd District Supervisors. So our 3rd and final panel consists of candidates for our 3rd District Supervisor. Yes. The format for this forum will be that each candidate will be allowed a 2-minute opening statement. After that, we will have 4 prepared questions put together by the sponsors of this forum. And as I mentioned, the sponsors are AAUW, the Little Lake Grange, and the Mendocino Women's Political Coalition. And I'd like to give a hand for those organizations. After those 4 questions, we will take questions from the audience as time allows. Candidates will respond in a pre-selected random basis. So I will let the person know who is next to speak and who is on deck or next in line as we go through the responses. So I don't think there are any other issues to deal with. So let's start, and I'm going to also start with our opening statements on a random basis also. So our first candidate we would like to hear from is Michael Horger.
My name is Michael Horger. Thanks everybody for coming out. I'm 4th generation from Willits. My parents graduated from high school. I graduated. My daughter graduated this year. My son did last year. And aunts and uncles and numerous. I've been involved in a lot of activities in this town. Frontier Days, I was there for about 30 years. I also was a fire department. I injured my back one night on a call, so that's why I'm not doing that anymore. I worked as a business agent for the Teamsters Union. When I was on the fire department, I served as association president, and then when I did get injured, then I ran for and was elected to the fire board of directors. I've coached many sports, and since I got injured, I went and started volunteering in the schools, trying to find a better place for me than sitting at home watching TV. And I started helping out in classrooms, and I was told I'd do better on site council, so I was doing both. I've been on site councils 9 years. I'm at the high school this year. This is probably my last year since I won't have a child in the school anymore. I worked in the customer service industry, worked at car dealerships, and worked in different areas where I help people and find their needs. And I'm the type of person, anything I've ever volunteered for, I've researched, I've communicated, and we've got things done. And that's why I feel I needed to run, because we need to get things done. We need to get things done for our community and our area. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next candidate is John Haschak.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all for coming out. And I can't see your faces, so I wanted to stand up, just like I do when I'm teaching. So I've always had a passion for advocating for others, for seeking justice, and for working for a better world. I've done this in many ways. I've been a Peace Corps volunteer in Guatemala. I've worked with migrant farm workers. I've been in teaching in the public schools in Willits for the last 28 years. And during that time, I've had several opportunities to outreach those skills that I have. I've been the chair of the CTA, the California Teachers Association Budget Committee, for 7 years. That's an elected position. That's dealing with the statewide budget for the California Teachers Association. It's a $200 million budget. And my job has been to develop the budget, balance it, and get it passed at the state level by the 800 members representing the 325,000 teachers. One thing that you don't know about me is that I also started the Green Caucus at the California Teachers Association, and that was to promote cleaner, healthier schools for all of our children. We've done that at the state level with various bills, and I also was able to eliminate all the plastic bottles from all functions of the California Teachers Association. So that is a great savings for our landfills. Another thing that I've also been the president of the local teachers association for 16 years, and in that capacity I've been trying to promote healthy families. I've been working for cleaner water. We've also worked on getting arts and music into the schools and not just teaching to the test. I'm John Haschak. Thank you.
Our next candidate is Shauna Jevons.
Hello, I'm Shauna Jevons. I'm the Generation X candidate that's running for 3rd District Supervisor. So I like to think that as Generation X as in multiply, because I'm a teacher, or if you put it on its side, plus, inclusion. So I'm running for 3rd District Board of Supervisors, and we have a bunch of really great candidates here. I noticed that on the Board of Supervisors, it's currently 80% male, and I am a working mother running for this position that has strong roots in Mendocino County. I have a 9-year-old and 11-year-old that are growing up here. My grandmother's 101, so we have 4 generations here serving you. I grew up on an organic mini farm that grew food in a Class K house with a family that was dedicated to public service. That's my background. As far as history, I worked for the city of Willits for 7 years. I worked in the Public Works and Engineering Department for 2 years, and I currently teach at the high school, Willits High School, and Mendocino Community College. I've learned so much from everyone up here. This is our last forum, as far as I know. Week after week, coming here, everybody bringing insights. I know John Pinchas ran on the slogan, "He's one of us." I'm also one of us. I grew up with ranchers, farmers, loggers, hippies, First Americans, immigrants, environmentalists, hunters, that all make this place so wild and wonderful. I know Susie Barsotti, the long O, is very articulate and confident, and I really appreciate that she brings to the table the 10-year plan for prescribed burns. Tony, my brother from another mother, I've learned so much from with his social justice and compassion. Cindy has always been on the front lines of community development. Pamela speaks the truth about emptying our jails. Mike is an expert on emergency services. and has check with serving the classroom and the world's needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Tony Tucker.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. My name is Tony Tucker. I'm from Round Valley, the northeastern reaches of the county. I was a Cub Scout. I was a Weebelo. I was a Boy Scout. I was a Mason. So, more particularly a DMLA, function of Mason. So, community service, civic pride, and civic duty has been integral to my whole existence, my whole entire life. Why am I doing this? Because of that civic pride, because of my desire to make a difference for people, because social justice is justice, equality, equity for all, and the power to access hope. If you can access hope, you can have confidence in yourself. If you have confidence in yourself, you can feel empowered. If you're empowered, you can make decisions that affect you positively in your life. That starts with education. So we need to structure our education system where we're empowering young people, where we're supporting them, where we're cultivating a future for all generations of this county. So that's just one of the many, many issues that affect us right now. So it's about leadership. And it's about commitment to leadership, and it's about making the hard decisions, and it's about being able and willing to compromise when you need to. It's not about carrying a heavy hand and making sure you're heard all the time. It's about making sure that you hear. And I am dedicated to hearing what you have to say. I am dedicated to being your advocate, to being your leader, and to being your representative. Thank you very much. My name is Tony Tucker, and I represent Round Valley Covelo.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Pamela Elizondo.
We have a lot of serious problems facing our county. We have a lot of homelessness. We have a lot of joblessness. We have a lot of people in prison and in jails that don't belong there, and it's costing a whole bunch of people here a whole bunch of money. There's one way that I know of that we can solve all of those problems, and it's very serious. In 2014, there was no water running into Shasta Lake from Sacramento River. The Sacramento River and Shasta Lake feeds everybody all the way down to San Diego. The water is poisoned seriously from Sacramento at least down. We're running out of water here. I understand that this year there's going to be record highs in Mendocino County, possibly up to 120 and 130 degrees a day. I suggest that we start growing marijuana really, really quickly. We make laws governing the use of water across the state. And if we start growing marijuana just with the wineries that waste water and land and are of no good except for profit loss statements for huge corporations, we can start producing the things that we need to stop plastic poisoning. We can create an entire house with an incinerator toilet that'll help save us water. We can start doing many, many things, including creating clean air, food, and water. And we better get down on it really, really quick because times are getting really bad.
Thank you. Next is Cindy Logan.
Hi. Let me give you some of my credentials. I started out working at NASA after college at Ames Research Center. Then I was with Unified Mortgage, which was a nationwide mortgage company. It ended up being countrywide. I was an executive officer for that. I ran the NWCRA and the NWPRA railroads right-of-ways. I have negotiated leases with Sprint, Williams, Pac, Bell for fiber optics leases. I have worked with PG&E on major leases. On my community and public and nonprofit, I was on the Mendocino County of Government's Technical Advisory Committee. I was the president of an economic development corporation. I was the NCO chairman. I ran Wowzer. I was a planning commissioner and a community coordinator for Willits for 10 years. During that time, I brought the community kitchen so farmers could have value added to the Grange here. I put the bike locker in, the public bike locker in Willits. I was one of the initiators of the School of Adaptive Agriculture. I did the second floor of the Arts Center here in Willits. I was awarded with our Photo Voice project, the League of Cities Helen Putnam Award. I did the first community garden in Willits. So I've had a lot of work I've done in this community. I have always worked for this community. Currently, I am the housing director for the Caddo tribe in Laytonville, and I interface directly with the federal government on a regular basis. So I'm familiar with programs and funding that's coming down the pike, and that's the kind of stuff we need to be looking at, what we're going to be doing within our county. Thank you.
Next is Susie Barsotti.
I'm not going to say it.
Barsotti, excuse me. Susie Barsotti.
It's a running gag on this campaign. Hi, I'm Susie Barsotti. I live in Long Valley at the northern end at a place called Black Oak Ranch, where I've been in partnership with a community of consensus for 43 years called the Hog Farm. I live at the ranch with my husband of 33 years, Bob, my daughter Ariel, our middle daughter, and my mother lives right around the pond from us, so we have a little compound there. A big part of what I think I bring to this is the value of collaboration and compromise. In 43 years of communal living, if you come to the table with 40 or 50 people to do your business, to run the businesses that you own in common, you really have to have those solid values of compromise and collaboration all the time. It has to flow. I'm really good at that. I've been on the board of the Trees Foundation for 21 years, and I've been the board president there for 17. 27 years of event production at Black Oak Ranch has brought me a really wide scope of, from doing live events is basically an exercise in community building from the ground up. You go into a bare field and you add public services, you add safety, you add place for the kids, you add places for families and seniors. It's in microcosm what the county does. I think that I have a lot of talent in that department to look at macro and micro systems concurrently, which one has to do in the production business. I've also worked for many, many years with groups large and small, and one thing I've learned without question is that everybody at the table has something to bring. And to be aware of that potentiality and open to it is what good leaders do. Thank you.
And our last opening statement will come from John Pinches.
Thank you, and thank you for the organizations that put this on. You know, I really, not going to get into who I am. I think everybody out there knows who I am, and that's a lot in part to the thanks of our very active news media, both paper and radio, in the 3rd District. It's been a pleasure. Sometimes I've been on the bad side of what they have to say, but at least they say it, and they keep the 3rd District well informed, and I think that's a really tribute. There's two things that really keep me. As you know, I've been on the Board of Supervisors for 12 years, been chairman of the board 3 different times. There's two things that really separate me from my candidates, or my opponents, and I like them all. I think they're all great people, and their intentions are well. But there's two things that really separate me from my opponents. One is I'm the only one here who don't have any hair, and that's the first one. But the second and most important one is my experience. Like I say, being 12 years on the Board of Supervisors, serving on dozens of boards and commissions over the years. Sometimes you get reappointed. But one thing that's an issue I've never brought up before, but it is coming up. If one of my opponents were elected the first day on their job, the first day, within the first 15 minutes on the job, will be chairman of the Board of Supervisors. I have the experience. I've done that 3 times. It's a really important important assignment, but the rotation is set up to the 3rd District will be the next chairman of the board coming in the first week in January. That's something I think you folks ought to really seriously think about. Do you want to put somebody that's there that's got the experience and go to work from day one working, or do you want to put somebody in training? I'm not being critical of my opponents, but that's just, I think, a real issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we will come to our first prepared question. Will be answered first by Pamela, to be followed by Michael. And I hope it's okay to use first name basis. Okay. So our first question. Please, this actually begins with a question to all of the candidates. Please raise your hand indicating, raise it if you oppose the county administration's proposal to combine the management of the library, parks, and museum into one department. So the question is, what would you propose in its place? So we'll start with Pamela, followed by Michael.
Well, one of the main reasons that I would not oppose combining it is because we spend an awful lot of money on bureaucracy in this county. And it seems to me that the less money we spend on bureaucracy, the more we can spend on homelessness and joblessness and other things that we really need in our country, in our county. I know a lot of people don't agree with me on this, but I think that in order for us to keep things running, it might end up being the only way that we're able to keep things going. Because our money is getting really tight here with the cannabis field dying as it is, and it's not going to come back with the large corporations. Colorado is almost dead, and California is going to be. So I suggest we put everybody to work, growing marijuana everywhere. We'll increase the tax base, and we'll be able to keep the three things separate.
Thank you. Michael, to be followed by John Pinches.
Thank you. When I first heard about this and they decided to run, I got involved. I went down and went to the library, talked with them. Then I went over next door to the museum and talked with them. And I've, and they're all against it because to have a job, especially a job in the public, you have to have passion. And I don't think, they need a curator now, and they're looking for one. So it's, things aren't at the museum what they want. But the tourism in this town isn't what it should be as far as people going to the museum. In the skunk train, I went down and talked with Robert, and there's 20,000 people go to the skunk train. 3,750 went through the museum. So 2 blocks away, there's a skunk museum or a train museum, and nobody goes to it. So we need to communicate and let people know what we have in this town, and that's just one example of how to bring money to the museum so it can stand on its own and bring its own income in. That's it for a minute, sorry.
Thank you. Next is John Pinches, to be followed by Shauna.
The reason I oppose the combination of combine the library, and museum, and the parks is, first of all, there's very few general dollars available there. The library, as you know, your past sales tax increase was for the library initiative. I forget what the measure was, but it put our libraries on really good financial ground. As far as the museum, there's very little general fund money, and the department heads that operate, whether it's the library or the museum, and there's no department head in the parks, they are working people. They don't just sit around being department heads. They actually do the performance of either the museum or, so there's no money to be saved there. This was an issue that was brought up by one supervisor in a word I get under closed session. They were trying to find a solution to find a department head, and it was just an idea. It was thrown out there, and it kind of got some traction. But it's in my opinion, it's going nowhere, and certainly if I get in there, it won't go nowhere.
Thank you. Next to respond is Shauna Jevons, to be followed by Tony Tucker.
All right, the library is already standing on its own. The library is doing fine. The parks definitely need more funding. I believe the budget is about $18,000 a year. It's just enough to empty the trashes. Our parks definitely need more attention. And the museum, I would like to see a full-time director, promoter, marketer. The one county museum is located in Willits, and that is what we have. Now we're looking to put the mental health lockdown facility in Ukiah because it's a better location. So that's going to be all sorts of economic revenue coming to Ukiah. We need to promote what we have with the library in Willits to bring revenue to Willits, and I think that means getting not just an interim director or sharing the director with the library, but that's a full-time museum position to promote the museum. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Tony, to be followed by Susie.
So I think what we should do is advertise our museums and advertise our parks and advertise the heck out of them and include the skunk train in with that advertisement to create the funding, to create a position for a director of museum services. So they're an actual curator. I love history. I think that history is an integral part to our moving forward, knowing where we come from, not making the same mistakes twice, and growing from the information that we have in front of us. I love history. This morning on Facebook, there was a fabulous picture of North State Street from the Ukiah Daily Journal. It was awesome. And if we think about how far we've come from where we've come, and we recognize that, it makes it easier for us to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Susie is next, to be followed by Cindy. No, I'm sorry. Yes, Susie's next, to be followed by Cindy.
All right, mysterious. I pretty much agree with everything that my colleagues up here have said, and I would add that, to my knowledge, the library is standalone, working well. It's lean and mean, and there's nothing to mess with there. The museum, on the other hand, I know has not been running well. It's been shoddily run, actually, for the last few years. I actually know people that work for the library and don't anymore, and so they told me stuff. And I don't think it's a mystery to anybody that that's true. I was really concerned because I'm in the live event business, it was very concerning to me that the museum thought that they should become producers of live events. They actually lost money on those events. They were kind of great on the surface of it, but they also burnt through the volunteers around here. By the second or third time around, people didn't want to do it anymore. That place needs a full-time manager, it needs a curator, and we should, I love Michael's idea of connecting it with the skunk train. That's a really good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. And last to respond is John Haschek.
Okay. I am. I'm just mangling the microphone. Sorry. Yeah, I think this was brought to the board as a knee-jerk reaction. It was brought forward with no operation plan. There was no clear funding sources, how they were going to keep them separate. It shouldn't have been brought to the board of directors or the supervisors that way. And frankly, they probably shouldn't even have heard it. Without having a budget and an operating plan, you don't just throw things together just to throw them together. That's not how you keep track of your funding sources, and it's just not good business. You know, I'm for libraries, museums, parks. I'm for everything. I want to see the funding streams. I want to see them clearly identified, and I really want to make them happen, but you don't make them happen by lumping them together and saying, oh, we'll do this somehow, maybe, sort of. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for interrupting you at that point, Cindy. And last to respond is John Haschek.
Yes, like everyone else, I'm against that proposal, even though I'm for, consolidation of administrative tasks. In concept, that's a good idea, but in this picture, it's a flawed, bad idea. And one of the things about this is that when it was brought up to the Board of Supervisors, the Board of Supervisors chambers was flooded with people from Willits, Laytonville, Covelo, Gualala, everywhere, saying this is a real bad idea, and yet the supervisors did not listen to the people. They keep going forward with that plan. There haven't been the analysis done. There hasn't been the number crunching that needs to happen. And so I think that we need to go back to the basics of democracy, which is listening to the constituents and see what they say and go from there.
Thank you. Our next question relates to our town economy. The Willits business community and community as a whole is strongly impacted as a result of the Willits bypass. What are your ideas to enhance the economic base of Willits and still maintain the beauty of our area? What industry or job opportunities might you strive to bring to Willits and or to Mendocino County in general? So first to answer will be Shauna, and on deck will be Tony.
Okay, great. I think our community was hit hard not only by the bypass, but also by the legalization of cannabis, as well as the serial ADA compliance. So we have a bunch of heavy hits, not just the bypass that we're dealing with right now. The focus that I like to promote, I'd like to promote cannabis, branding our own Mendocino County craft-grown strains, as well as promote food growing, and then open it up into other venues. What I'd really like to see, there's a program at Sonoma State University, and it's actually an MBA, and I think an executive MBA in wine marketing and making. I'd like to see us focus on education. I don't think Board of Supervisors has to be separate than education. I'd like to see Mendocino College become a 4-year university. That's something dear to my heart, and I would like to see a PhD program there with soil testing, cannabis testing. We could coin that as part of our county. So I have some big ideas like that. That is one of my friendliest ideas. I also think that we should do something I'll tell you about later. My time's up.
Thank you, Shauna. Next is Tony, to be followed by Susie.
Okay, so I agree with Shauna on all of those levels. You can't disagree with that. I think that embracing appellations will help put like a moniker on Mendocino County and give us a little bit more latitude in the cannabis business. I think embracing cannabis tourism and advertising for that is key. I also think that just general tourism advertising is a key to supporting businesses in Willits and throughout the county. If you have DirecTV or Dish Network, you're watching Channel 5 News, you're watching those other outlets, they're constantly advertising tourism in other cities. We should embrace that. We should get people up here. We should get them staying in our motels, riding in the train, and going to our museums, spending time in our parks, our lakes, our rivers, and enjoying what we have to offer here. There is so much to offer in Mendocino County. We can't sit on our hands.
Thank you. Next is Susie, to be followed by Cindy.
All good points, my colleagues. I would add to that on the canna-tourism, which I really don't like that term. I like agritourism. That's what everybody else in the world says. And I think that we should use that term as well, because I believe that cannabis is being separated out, and it should not be. It should be enfolded into our culture as it is, into our economics, and into our communities. And in that, saying that, I believe that we should be bundling agriculture in general, cannabis culture. There's a whole new emerging herbal culture going on in our county, which I'm really excited about, which is also connecting itself to people who are looking for a health vacation. All these things can be braided together into a wonderful experience for people that don't get to live in the place that we do. It might even attract some new people to come up here with their own great ideas and dig in with the rest of us.
Thank you. Next is Cindy, to be followed by John Haschak.
Okay, for the city of Willits, I would aggressively go after having the city guarantee leases, putting people in stores right now in the vacant spaces by them guaranteeing co-leasing environments where you have 3 or 4 either makers, you have 3 or 4 artists, you have people sharing the spaces, you fill up all our empty spaces right now, wouldn't cost the city hardly anything at all. It's something that could be done right away. And that'll start bringing more people to Willits tomorrow. This isn't something you have to wait for grants. You don't have to wait for anything else. This is something we can do ourselves. And we could do this type of business making in all our communities. Another thing the city needs to do is adopt an ACU regulation so you could have accessory dwelling units so people have places to live in and work.
Thank you. Next is John Haschak, to be followed by John Pinches.
All right. I think this issue is really, it's broader than what we've been looking at right now. I think that, we've got lots of issues with our economy in Willits and in the 3rd District, but we really need to look back at the basics of career and technical education. Senator Mike McGuire did a great program when he was a supervisor down in Sonoma County, getting the Career and Technical Education Foundation for Sonoma County. We can do something like that for all types of career and technical education. That's working with private industry, working with the colleges and the schools. We can do a lot more than we're doing. We need to get broadband in, because we're not going to survive in the 21st century without broadband. We need to diversify our economy more than it is right now, because we cannot just rely on one crop or one agricultural product. So,
Thank you. Next is John Pinches,
Thank you. This is a very
followed by Michael.
This is a very extensive question, and it needs a lot of attention. I think the first thing that has to happen above all is we have to get some reasonable and affordable housing for our locals to stay here and take up the jobs. If you go up and down the streets, even in Willits, you'll see signs up there looking for help. And you say, why can't they get help? Well, for the amount of money that the salaries that they can afford to pay, they can't find reasonable housing. So it kind of all starts out not on the 8 hours you work, but the rest of your life where you're living in your home. So that's where it comes into housing, and we can work on 2nd and 3rd units on these small parcels. We got literally, ladies and gentlemen, thousands of small parcels out there around Willits, around Covelo, around Laytonville, all over the 3rd District. They're very underutilized for housing. They've got good water hookups. They got septic tanks at worst. So we need, and there's just policies need to be changed. It's not state law. It's something that's doable on the Board of Supervisors. But we need to work on that and work on that fast. I think we can make a significant difference within the first year. And I'm not good at making promises to people, but I'll do everything I can, because that's what starts the economy.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Next is Michael, to be followed by Pam.
So even before I decided to run for supervisor, actually it's one of the reasons I did, is we haven't been proactive about the bypass. Everybody's been complaining about it. I've been going to meetings for years, and I keep bringing up the skunk train. Robert Pernoli called me and says, hey, you're the only one out of anybody that's mentioned the skunk train. He gave me the demographics of how many people come to Willits. 20,000 average, 20,000, 2016, 17,000, 2017 went to the skunk train. But nobody's going uptown. Nobody's going anywhere. So on the revitalization committee, we decided we want to put a kiosk across in the parking lot, because evidently people are getting in their cars and leaving. And they send out questionnaires. People are staying 2.5 days. They're spending $664. There's 3.44 people in their parties, but they're not eating in town. They're not staying in town. They're not walking in town. Where are they going? We've got Measure G, which is coming up here on the ballot. It's to add. It's just an addition to the bed tax to add campers and campgrounds to it. They're estimating bring in $1 million. Sorry, there's my minute, so sorry.
Thank you. And last is Pam.
We have got quite a few problems in different ways, too. We have feral pigs destroying our land. We have garbage filling up our land. I suggest we put together crews to clean up the garbage and recycle the garbage and bring it to the dumps. I suggest the dumps have 2 amnesty days and the wrecking yards have 2 amnesty days a month. I suggest we go out and it sounds bad, but we should slaughter the pigs, and we should create slaughterhouses and market the pigs for cat food, dog food, and human food. And after we clean up the land, we should put everybody to work restoring the land, growing marijuana and plants, and healing the world by doing that. and putting everybody to work, which will heal up our tax base and everything.
Thank you. Our next question, the issue focuses on cannabis. And the question, there are numerous issues facing the county regarding cannabis cultivation. 1, environmental mitigations, such as protections for oak woodlands and limits on water diversions. 2, need for a timely permitting process and whether the permits go with the growers or the land. And 3, enforcement of all cannabis regulations. How would you address these issues?
In 60 seconds?
Well, it's a lot, and you can essentially you can pick which issues seem most important to you to first address, because it's impossible to address all of them. So first up is Susie, to be followed by Pam.
I already used my first 5 seconds. My biggest issue with what is happening with the mighty framework of regulatory and taxation systems put out there by the state and by all the counties is that it's completely overbuilt. It's redundant in many places. There's a lot of laws and ordinances on the books already that protect workers, dirt, water, fish, et cetera. But at the same time, while this amazing structure has been going up to bureaucratize everything, there has been no promotion of this amazing new industry that's supposed to be pulling everyone out of hog. I think it's like there is no business plan at all. And meanwhile, our county has already had to refund money for admin permits that the people don't need anymore. So that's basically, in a nutshell, where I'm coming from about the cannabis issue. I'm really worried about losing my neighborhood, honestly, folks. The people that are staying and getting in compliance, they're my people. They're the people that are dug in, that are they are Mendonesians.
Thank you very much.
I want to protect them.
Thanks so much. Next is Pam, to be followed by Cindy.
It's pretty obvious where I stand. And the Senate Majority Leader, the federal Senate Majority Leader, is from Kentucky, and he's pushing for the legalization of industrial hemp because Kentucky is making so much money off of industrial hemp. And a few other states are doing it now. And our very own Judge Hathaway said in 1978, it's unconstitutional for anybody to spend their time thinking about what's happening with marijuana. As abortion, that's a moot question. It's our choice. Let us start concentrating on how we're going to provide jobs and keep people out of jail and prison. And how are we going to provide clean, decent air, food, and water for our people instead of worrying about what's going to happen with marijuana? It's insane.
Thank you. Next is Cindy, to be followed by John Pinches.
On the environmental end, I'm still for having people licensed with outdoor organic grows. I think that's where it needs to be. I don't like the idea of doing the indoor grows and using all the electricity and all the chemicals, and they do have higher chemical and pesticide impacts, and I really don't like that. On the permit process, we've already spent in a budget money that didn't exist by saying that we were going to receive all this income from marijuana tax. That money's been spent by the county, over $1 million that never even existed. So we're already very far behind on a permitting process that doesn't even work. So we need to get the permitting process working much easier, much better. And the third thing is they're working on a tri-county JPA, which will add another layer of bureaucracy to the permitting process.
Thank you. Next is John Pinches, to be followed by Michael.
Thank you. In this fiscal year we're in right now, the Mendocino County Cannabis Regulation Program is going to lose about $2.5 million of your taxpayers' dollars. That's the way it's set up. About the only part of the existing cannabis regulations I approve of is the part that says we're going to protect it and keep it out of rangeland and timber production land. I do support that. That was supported by your environmental groups and a lot of many residents, and I think that's a good idea. If they want to expand and make big operations, they can get a use permit, just like anybody else doing any other part of a zoning that has questionable zoning to allow it. There's lots of issues, you know, to deal with it, but how can you set up a program that costs you $2.5 million and only taking in a small portion of that? Where the net loss in this fiscal year is $2.5 million on a cannabis program. That needs to be repealed immediately.
Thank you. Next is Michael, to be followed by Tony.
So Proposition 64 passed, and I think it was put on the ballot with good intentions of growing it, taxing it, making money out of it, and bringing people out of the woods. Then the government got involved, and now it's where it is now. They just tried to spend the money before they even made it. They tried to figure out who they were going to tax, how they're going to fee, and they raised everything. I mean, it's a plant. I mean, it's the same as growing corn, growing anything, but they decided that it needed a lot different regulations than any other product for some reason. The Board of Supervisors just joined the California Cannabis Authority, and it's one member from every county, and they picked as our member Shapmeyer, which is our tax collector. And I was kind of amazed at that. Why didn't they send our agricultural, but why a tax collector? But my minute's up now, but thank you.
Thank you. Next is Tony, followed by John Haschak.
Wouldn't it be nice if this was a moot point? Wouldn't it be nice if state regulations had been written correctly in the first place? Wouldn't it have been nice if county regulations and ordinances would have been written right in the first place? We're trying to keep big business out of this small business, out of this mom and pop business, and we're doing exactly the opposite of that. We want to talk about the bypass impacting economy in Willits. Talk about the loss of cannabis business throughout the county and how it's affected the whole county as a whole. Not just Willits, not just Covelo, not just Laytonville. All of our money has been cut in half, just in half because of this legalization. So we really need to reevaluate the process, make it equitable and fair across the board, and encourage people to get permits.
Thank you. Next is John Haschak, to be followed lastly by Shauna.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with what Tony just said, is that we have these regulations from Prop 64, and really the intent was to bring people into compliance, to bring them out of the black market, and to make it so there's no environmental degradation and that the bad actors, bad neighbors are taken care of, and there's compliance issues. But we have a problem when we only have 1% of the growers in Mendocino County getting into compliance. And so that's a huge problem. We really need to streamline those regulations. We need to reduce some of the fees where we can, and we need to make it work so those people do come into the light of the open market that we have with Prop 64. So.
Thank you. Shauna?
Okay, I would agree with the Santa Rosa Ag Director that we should treat cannabis like any other crop. It doesn't need to be in its own separate regulation. And I also believe we should be building and branding wellness. We don't want to make the same mistake that was recently made, recent history in Oregon, where cannabis was legalized and there were no dispensaries, no marketing, no outlets. So even before we legalized it in California, for 3 years, about Oregon cannabis has been flooding our market, dropping the prices down before it even dropped down further with our regulations. I think we need to look to recent history, not make those same mistakes, and treat cannabis like any other crop.
Thank you. Our next question is a question centered around the budget. So while we're waiting for a minute, I was asked before if I could see a show of hands raised if you would be interested in a future public forum about broadband services in the North or 3rd District. Show of hands of those that might be interested in that. From the audience, yes, we're asking the audience. I'll say it again. A show of hands to see. Show of hands raised if you would be interested in a future public forum about broadband services in the North or 3rd District. Wow. Okay. Great. Thank you. Okay, our next question.
Can I make a quick comment on that?
No, you may not. No, we're going to continue. Our next question is about the budget. The supervisor's 40% pay raise and the county's CEO's yearly pay increases are not commensurate with the raises received by other county workers. Would you be willing to adjust the supervisor's salaries and the county CEO's salary so they are in step with raises received by other county workers? So we will start this series of responses with John Haschak, to be followed by Shauna.
Well, thank you. That's a great question. And with my budget experience with California Teachers Association, I've been looking at this very closely, and I'm in total disagreement with that 40% raise that the supervisors gave themselves. It wasn't in line with the county workers. My pledge is to not take that increase, and I will not take it. I'll do what Supervisor Dan Jurdy did, which was taking it less and making it comparable to what the county workers are getting. Unless everyone can get a 40% raise, you don't give the top people a 40% raise. That's been a long bone of contention, and I would like a commitment from the other candidates about the same thing. But I've also looked at the budget and seen some other irregularities with it, increases in the executive office that we need to really look at. And unless you're looking at the whole picture, let's get in there and not give ourselves a raise when we're deficit spending.
Thank you. Next is Shauna, to be followed by Tony.
Okay, yes, let's talk about the big B word, budget and salaries. So my question is, I'm perplexed why the county workers who have a union didn't get a pay raise. So I think that really needs to be addressed, what our unions are doing for us. Because I think that county workers should be paid at least $15 to $19 an hour. So I think that is where our effort and energy should go, into really fine-combing the budget, figuring out where the money's going and reallocate so that county workers get a bigger piece of the pie. And I'm not sure what unions are doing.
Thank you. Next is Tony, to be followed by Pam.
So I am in disagreement with the 40% supervisor raise. From the moment I started this campaign, I have been looking into the CEO's salary, and I'm trying to figure out how that coordinates into what is being done in the office and what benefit that has to us as constituents of the county. I work close with a lot of county employees, and they're hard workers, and I have a hard time when it's always just about management. Management does the hard work. What about the people on the front lines? What about the teachers? What about your child care workers? What about your people on the street, cleaning the street, picking up your trash? These frontline people need more respect and better pay so they can survive in this county. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Pam, to be followed by Susie.
The October 18th and October 25th hometown shopper on the back page told how the city of Ukiah is holding almost $20 million to fight a suit against the sanitation corporation, and the corporation is using the taxpayers' money to fight the suit against them. The manager of Ukiah is getting over $280,000 a year to manage Ukiah. I don't know how much our CEO is getting, but it seems to me that they're not doing a really good job. And anybody that's not doing a good job in our government maybe really shouldn't be there.
Thank you. Next is Susie, to be followed by Michael.
Hard to argue with everything that's been set up here. I've already gone on the record to say that I would also be taking the jury approach, thank you, if elected. Obviously, county workers need to be supported in a more wholesome way. I'm not so sure about talking about the CEO or what she makes, what her salary is, but I do know after talking to someone who works with her that she has managed to put into reserves a couple $1 million, which wasn't there before. Oh, excuse me? Okay, we can talk later. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Michael, to be followed by John Pinches.
When I applied for the job, when Tom Woodhouse stepped down, I got interviewed, and at that time I had no idea the job even got paid, so I feel a little naive there. But I volunteered most of my life, so I really wasn't looking for a paycheck. I was looking to help. And as far as them getting the supervisors giving themselves a huge pay raise, I have a lot of people that work for the county, and I was kind of, when they got a pay cut years ago, and they really haven't even got their money back from their pay cut, that's not really the the up and up type of thing you want to see, especially from, the leadership. But the county roads just renegotiated their positions, and they got everybody a few dollars more raise to try and keep retention. And I hope that happens in every industry or every department. They figure out a way to get retention, because that's a severe problem when you train somebody and they leave. But when I heard about the pay raise and about the money, I said, well, I can donate more to the schools, buy more stuff for them. But thank you, and there's my minute.
Thank you. Next is John, and we will finish with Cindy on this question.
There's been a lot of misinformation here in the last 15 minutes I've heard. First of all, the CEO's salary is totally discretionary for the Board of Supervisors to assign that. She's not part of any one of the 7 bargaining groups, and Mendocino County has 7 different bargaining groups. SEIU is the largest one, but there are 7 different bargaining groups. As far as the Board of Supervisors' salary, state law says that the Board of Supervisors set their own salary. It's not done by the vote of the people or anything. It's set by the salary. It's the Board of Supervisors hasn't received a pay raise in probably about 15 years. The county's finances are a lot better now. When I first went on the Board of Supervisors in 1995, the county budget was $102 million. Now it's just under $300 million. So there is quite a bit more money to circulate, and that goes to mostly salaries. Salaries are the biggest expense, all the way from the CEO on down. But it's as far as me taking the salary, I would accept the salary increase, because frankly, I'll be worth it. I remember on one incident, getting the garbage out of the, getting the county out of the, not getting the garbage out of the county business, getting the county out of the garbage business, and that one
Thank you very much.
project that I done saved over $1 million a year, and we'll save that from here on out.
Thank you. And lastly is Cindy.
The salary wasn't why I'm running. I'm okay with salary I make. Whatever salary I end up with at the Board of Supervisors, I can just about guarantee I'll bring more money into this county one way or another than just about anyone else, because I know how to find grants, I know how to do economic development, and that's what I'm going to be going after. I'm going to be trying to get our housing and everything going. So the salary is kind of a moot point. A Judy's way, the full amount, the 60 that I signed up for, it doesn't matter that much to me.
Thank you. So that is the completion of the questions prepared by the sponsors. Going forward, as I mentioned, Carlin here is bundling audience questions. So the question that comes out may not be worded exactly as you wrote it in the effort to try to respond to as many questions as possible. We may combine questions into one. So the next question is about county boards. On which county boards, commissions, and/or committees would you like to serve if you become supervisor, and why? How will you represent the First Nations tribal community? So we will start this round of answers with John Pinchas.
That's a pretty double point question there. As far as the tribal communities, I've always supported our tribes. I mean, you got to recognize them. Anybody that's serving in government got to recognize that our tribes, not the rancherias, but the tribal land, is sovereign. They're sovereign nations within the United States of America, and we have to respect their rights, respect their police force, and their ways and their policies. So I don't think that's really an issue for us here. I mean, other than to say the respect. And what's the second part of your question?
What committees, basically, what boards, commissions, or committees would you like to serve on if you become supervisor, and why?
I've served on a lot of them, dozens of them. But what I can say, one of the ones that's most effective is MCOG, commonly called the Mendocino Council of Government, which directs state funding into local road projects. And I was sitting on that for, I don't know, probably all of my terms. I was very effective in getting
time is up. Sorry.
in getting money here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, Susie, I didn't mention that you were to follow, but Susie, you are to follow, and after Susie will be John Haschek.
I also would like to serve on MCOG and on the Economic Development Committee. I agree with what John said about respecting the sovereignty of all the Indian tribes here, and of course that is just a given. I'm really proud of Mendocino County's Native population's presence here, and I'd actually like to work more closely with them and develop new programs to help, especially out in Covelo.
Thank you. Next is John Haschek, to be followed by Michael.
Well, I think we're in agreement that MCOG, the Mendocino County Office of Governments, is a crucial one, and especially for brook trails, to get the second access route. That is going to be the critical committee to get that funding going. And I totally appreciate the endorsements I've gotten from each and every member of the Brook Trails Board, because they know that I'm going to work on that as one of my top priorities. Also, anything that deals with families, I think that I need to be in part of, because of my concern and care for what's going on with the families of Mendocino County. As far as the tribal representation or respect, I've been up to Covelo many times. I've been to quite a few of their tribal council meetings. I've been to the Tribal Health Center. I went to the respite care. I am endorsed by Ada Stevenson in Laytonville. And I think that I've got great respect for that community. It's not just sovereignty, it's more about respect, about cultural awareness and celebration.
Thank you. Next is Michael, to be followed by Cindy.
I think we all agree that the Indians are definitely a priority, and I mean, they were here first, so, but as far as what boards, definitely Fire Safe Board. I do have a lot of experience in Fire Safe. I want to make sure that all the areas around have an escape plan, have marked key directions, and we do drills. Brook trails, when the Oakland Hill fires happened, we went up and set brook trails up, also set Pine Mountain up, with escape routes, where to meet. Then they haven't been updated for 20 years. I was kind of amazed to hear that. But there's not going to be any money around for second access, so we just need to make sure that we get every escape route and every lock. Somebody has a key that can unlock it, have directions of where the safe places are, and then get ordered in what we need at safe places: food, clothing, portable cell towers, internet, everything people need so they can contact their other people. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Cindy, to be followed by Shauna.
Committees would be economic development and housing. Those are my favorites. But I will serve on any committee, and I'll do my best on it, and I will find the information to do my best on that. As far as working with the tribes, I think we're not working with the tribes enough. I think there's a lot we could learn from the tribes, and we're not actively partnering with them. And I'm not talking about come to our meeting so we could tell you what we want you to do. It's like, how do we learn? And there's something coming up really good in Covelo. It is a designated opportunity zone by the feds. That just happened on April 9th, 2018, and that is for economic development. That will cover a lot of things, and the county needs to be real active on making that happen before we lose it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Shauna, to be followed by Pam.
I'm going to make it short and sweet and then give my extra time to Tony if I have any. So I currently work with the tribes at Willits High School, and I would like to become more involved. As far as what committees, I talked to Krosky, who's in office right now, and she said they just put you on the committees no one else wants. You don't really have a choice. So I will do my best at whatever committee I'm put on. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Pam, to be followed lastly by Tony.
I think Mexicans are regular natives too. I think they're an integral part of it. But I think that a couple of years ago, the Supreme Court said that it was totally unconstitutional for them to run the jails and the prisons as businesses and the way they're running them. They're destroying our people's lives. They're doing absolutely no good. I would like to work at changing our prisons and our court systems and jails to mental health units where they center in on jobs, justice, peace, and putting people to work and restoring our people and our world, growing marijuana and using our people to the best, and our land to the best benefit of everybody.
Thank you. And lastly, Tony.
I want to serve on every committee I can. Fill my plate. Give me something to do. If it has something to do with families, children, and public safety, pile it on. Let's discuss this. Let's figure it out. Let's move forward. My wife is Wailaki Nomalaki. She is a member of Round Valley Indian Reservation. I am by no means an expert, and neither is she, and she's Native American. So we need to build collaboration. We need to build bridges. We need to heal old wounds. It's all about healing, and it's about moving forward, and it's about being historical conscious of what has happened in the past and how you can rearrange that and move forward. It's about taking care of our people, all of our people, whether they're indigenous, Mexican, European, whatever. We're all in this together. We're a breadbasket. We're very diverse. Let's embrace that and move forward with that.
Thank you.
My last 15 seconds to add.
No, sorry. Our next question deals with a mental health facility as authorized by the passage of Measure B. Measure B allowed for the establishment of a commission tasked with the responsibility of recommending a location for a mental health facility. There may be pushback or discontent from local citizens based on this recommended location, such as having a lockdown facility for the mentally ill located near a school, or whether or not the county superintendent of schools should be part of this discussion. How would you, as supervisor, address this issue so the voices of the community can be heard? And we will start with Cindy, to be followed by John Pinches.
The facility, whether lockdown or not, is a good thing to have in this county. And I will work with the community, I will work with people, I want to have hearings on it, and I think a lot of it is based more on aesthetics on where it's located rather than having it there or not. If it's a safe facility, it's a safe facility. How is it going to look? The second part of that is I want to say that 75% of the monies coming in the first 5 years go towards the facility and not towards treatment. And after that, I want to make sure that the 75% doesn't stay with the facility for treatment and that actually is able to serve people in all areas of this community and not just at the facility. Thank you.
Thank you.
No doubt the location of this facility will be.
Pam, you follow John Pinches.
Oh, no doubt the
Sorry.
location of this facility would be decided before any one of us sits on the Board of Supervisors. It'll certainly be done this year. One of the main problems that I have with this, not so much the siting of the facility, is to make sure that none of our existing, we get about $30 million a year in mental health services dollars to take care of our distressed citizens in Mendocino County. We serve people all the way from Point Arena to Covelo to Mina to Westport to Fort Bragg, all over the county, every day, 7 days a week. We have mental workers going out there making sure folks are on the right medication, what we can do for them. We try to, the best mental health program we got going is keeping people in their houses, in their homes, and supported by their family and friends. So it's just kind of a last resort to put people in a facility. We are also building a mental health wing on the new jail that the state give us a $25 million grant for. A lot of people don't know that, but included in that is a wing for mental health patients in the existing jail. So I don't know how a new built facility with that is. I hope it don't get into competition between, do we send them to the jail facility or send them to the mental health facility, but there's a lot of questions to be answered.
Thank you. Next is Pam, to be followed by Susie.
A couple of years ago, the people of California voted against new prisons and jails. The governor appropriated $3.5 billion for new prisons and jails, and over $20 million of it came to the county jail here, along with another $20 million to go ahead and build their stuff, even though it's unconstitutional for them to do that against our wishes. Last year, they appropriated another $38 million for a mental health unit at the jail. Well, we have to wait for our money to come in to get our mental health outside of the jail. I suggest that instead of spending that 38 at the jail, we spend it outside, create a bunch of little emergency care facilities that not only concentrate on mental health, but jobs, families, and healing our earth, instead of putting people in prison or in jail and destroying their lives, costing us immense amounts of money.
Thank you. Next is Susie, to be followed by Shauna.
Pamela, you're really a visionary.
Oh,
I want to give it up to you. I'm also very concerned, as Cindy and John just stated, about spreading the funds that we have for mental health throughout the county and not just concentrating it in the mental health units. I'm also concerned about the outlying services being sucked out of those areas and into a main event, so to speak. I am also thinking that having the vulnerable more situated among us is not a bad idea, and that, as Cindy said, if it's a lockdown, it's a lockdown. But I like the compassionate approach of integration of all the populations this way as much as we can. Meanwhile, it's a bit of a moot point because we don't have the assessment yet of what we actually are going to need, and who we need to serve in this county, and that's still happening right now.
thank you. Next is Shauna, to be followed by John Haschek.
I don't think the lockdown facility should go in our previous Howard Hospital space, and I do agree that we should have clinics in all three towns in the 3rd District, in Covelo, Laytonville, and Willits. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is John Haschek, followed by Tony.
Yeah, I came out at the last forum in Willits and said, yeah, Howard Hospital, if it made monetary sense to do it there and, you know, it could be done quicker, it would be a good thing to do. But as I've listened to people more and more, I'm finding out that there are different plans. There's this idea about bringing in patients from out of the district, and I don't think that was what people voted for Measure B. I was out there precinct walking in favor of Measure B to get it passed, but then the idea about bringing people in and housing them in the old Howard Hospital, that doesn't sit well with a lot of people in Willits. And I think that the whole idea really needs to be thought out. Is that where we want to go as a county? And we need to listen. We need to have these conversations with everyone in our communities. Certainly in Laytonville and Covelo, we need services. But I'm just not sure at this point if changing Howard Hospital is the right thing to do.
Thank you. Tony, to be followed lastly by Michael.
So I fully supported Measure B, and the importance of Measure B is that we, the people of Mendocino County, voted for Measure B. We, the people of Mendocino County, should be served by the money of Measure B. So beyond that, we need to start thinking, how do we get people involved? I think right now is a prime example of how you get people involved. You got 8 candidates for the 3rd district. It's unprecedented. So how do we feed that over into real life? How do we continue that? The Covelo Community Services Board is not fully seated. It's a 5-person board. There's 3 people on it. The Covelo Volunteer Fire Department does not have an actual elected board. It's mostly appointed. How do we get people involved in community service? It's by our example. It's by getting up and reaching across the aisle and saying, hey, we need your help. It comes from you. So your voices are being heard today. Your voices are going to be heard on June 5th and in between due to absentee ballots. So let's create the atmosphere where we want civic duty. Thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, Michael.
At the last quorum we had in town, the question was asked about Howard Hospital, and I was the only one against it. I didn't have all the information you need. There's not one big umbrella of what people need in mental health. I mean, there's some people just need to talk to somebody, and some people need to be strapped to a bed. I mean, there's a big variety. So we need to see what facilities we need for each. And I think if we do have the funding and we do have the availability with the way the county is spread out, it'd be nice to have smaller services in different counties. But I mean, if the jail, I mean, they're building their mental health facility, that would be the place for the people that need to be tied down. The problem we had before with the PUF unit is finding people to work in them. We don't have enough trained people in the area, and we have housing problems, we have other problems, so we might be putting the cart before the horse, figure out where to put it, but who are we going to have work them? We just have to think through everything.
Thank you. The next question deals with contracting services out of the county, hiring out-of-county people to provide services, people or organizations. So, again, putting 2 questions together. What is your position on contracting out county work or no-bid contracts? That's in general. And in particular, are you familiar with recent board discussions about closing Mendocino County Juvenile Hall and paying to house our youth in out-of-county facilities? What is your understanding of the impacts of this decision, and how would you vote? So we will start with Tony, to be followed by Cindy.
So this is a really huge issue, and I think that there are plenty of talented, well thought out plans within the county that we can contract our services within the county. They don't necessarily have to say county business, but they can stay within the county. I think we have the talent here to do that. I think we have smart minds and smart people that can carry that out. Here's the deal with foster care. Across the state, there's a moratorium on group homes. There's no new group homes, and they're closing group homes like crazy. So there's no place for young juveniles to go when they're in trouble, or they need help, or they're having mental issues and they need reassurances. So having our services from juvenile hall shipped out is totally negative, and it's backwards thinking, and it doesn't do anything to support our youth and to create, to empower them, or even to give them a little bit of hope. And that's where empowerment comes from, is from hope.
Thank you. Next is Cindy, to be followed by Michael.
On contracting out county services, I see what the county employees are being paid by reading the budget. I can't imagine a private company that is trying to make money off of it ever doing any better than we could with our own employees, so I'm very suspicious of that. I would also like to see, when we're issuing contracts for construction and that, I'd like to be able to see wherever we can put in local preference for hiring local people for contracts. And as to having juveniles go out of the county and not have juvenile hall, I'm against that. We already have a horrible results with our juveniles under mental health, because they have to wait 4, 5, 6 hours if they need to go to a mental health facility, and that's bad enough, and let's not ship them off. I'd love to see Howard Hospital. I'd like to see a juvenile mental health facility here. There's none anywhere near. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Michael, to be followed by John Haschak.
As far as juvenile hall shutting down, I don't know about I'd have to investigate, and I'd have to be inquisitive and find out the reason why, or where it was a better place that they would be going than what the services we have, or even you get into outsourcing, if we have to hire contractors in order to take care of the juvenile hall now because we don't have the correct people. And outsourcing, I mean, it kind of rolls into that. We have a limited amount of resources here in the county. Right now, when you have to do sprinklers in a house, we have 2 C-17 contractors that can put sprinklers in. So most of them are coming from Lake County or Sonoma County. The problem is they can charge what they want, so that increases the price of the house. And the lack of labor to do each job increases the amount. So it'd be, it's a catch-22. We want people to work here and we want to pay them here, but can they afford to be here?
Thank you. Next is John Haschak, to be followed by John Pinches.
Okay. First of all, the moving juveniles far away from their home is a bad idea. We need to keep those kids here where they have family support. We had the same issue with the mental health. That's why we passed Measure B, to keep those people close to home, to have that family support. Outsourcing of jobs, another bad idea. It's only in the very, very last situation, last resort, where we cannot do those jobs locally, then we go out and find someone else who can. But I think that we have the skills, we have the ingenuity, we have the skills and educated people in this county, that we need to keep that money in the county, we need to keep those jobs in the county, and we need to keep the money recirculating amongst us.
Thank you. Next is John Pinches, to be followed by Pam.
First of all, contracting out is nothing new in Mendocino County. As example, just this year, about $15 million of your mental health budget goes to contracts. It's contracted out. Just about every department, whether it's the road department, contracts out with a lot of contractors throughout the community projects. So contracting out in areas, it's really appropriate. Some places it can save money. Some places we don't have the county employees that have the expertise to do it. One thing that I will really cut back on is consulting contracts. Consulting contracts are nothing more that people doing the work that the Board of Supervisors should be doing. For instance, we just hired, I say we in Mendocino County, just hired a position that pays $98,000 plus benefits to run its cannabis program. That should be done partially in-house, at least with the ag department or the building and planning combined. You don't need to hire another high-paid. You realize when you pay a county position, over 50% is in benefits. So if you pay somebody $80,000, the cost to you taxpayers is $160,000. And that's where the jobs in Mendocino County are pretty good, because we have a benefit package for county employees that's comparable to nobody. We have the health program and everything, that's the Cadillac policy.
Thank you. Next is Pam, to be followed by Shauna.
The new mental health prison at the jail is being contracted out. They're getting quite a few $1 billion. I have huge amounts of friends that are in prison for nonviolent reasons, and they're tearing their families apart. We're paying a huge amount of money to keep them there. I suggest that the best thing that we can do for these disturbed children is put their parents to work. Give them a decent job, give them all the benefits they need, clean air, food, and water, and some decent housing, and that we contract with the college, like Shauna says, and start creating all of the educated fields that we need right here in Mendocino County. We have a college. Let's start using it properly.
Thank you, Shauna, and to be followed lastly by Susie.
Okay, great question. Thank you. We can't eliminate contracting out, but we can reduce it. So when I worked at City of Willits for especially the last 2 years in the public works and engineering, I would definitely see where we'd contract out, a job wouldn't be done right, and then we wouldn't have the tools to hold the company accountable. So I think that really needs to be looked in. I cannot stress enough how important oversight of contracts is and how important accountability is. In addition, I think that we should reduce contracting out. I'm not a fan of closing juvenile hall. I have students at the high school that are in and out of juvenile hall. They actually love it. They love the structure. You know, some people really like it. I think we should do, Pam's gonna like this, gardening in juvenile hall. Okay, that's my thoughts.
Thank you. And lastly is Susie.
Oh, sorry. I was conferring with my colleague who has so many numbers in his head. He just pointed out to me actually that and I was at that Board of Supervisors meeting where they presented about they were talking about the juvenile system. And there are currently 14 juveniles in that system. It's a $2.8 million program for the year. So that's something to take into consideration. That said, I don't think it's a good idea to separate kids in trouble from their family support. That just seems like a big step backwards. As far as contracting, I agree with what people have said up here. Obviously, contracting services out is something that government does. I think we could reduce it. We could look inside our county as much as possible. And I definitely think that the hiring consultants, that's where I've been turning a gimlet eye. They make a lot of money. It's like a year's salary some of these guys are making to do, 4 months' work or something, and maybe a little bit of, check back in a couple of years and see how it's going. Anyway, those are my feelings. Let's keep the kids close to their families, but let's look at the budget for the system, too.
Thank you. At this point, we began this third panel at 3:20, and we had scheduled 2 hours, which would take us to 5:20. If the original schedule had us ending at 5 o'clock. If we were to end at 5, we would have no more time for questions and just go to our candidates' closing statements. So, show of hands, go to closing statements. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Closing statements. First, like to hear from Michael, to be followed by John Haschek.
Well, thank you all for coming.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Candidates have 1.5 minutes for their closing statements. Thank you.
I'm gonna have to speed talk here. So, thank you all for coming out. Like I do research on everything before I make a decision. I mean, road maintenance, we have 1,020 miles of roads that we take care of, 600 paved, 420 unpaved. The 600 paved started out as horse trails or logging roads, so they never started out life as a road. They started out as a path, and we made them roads. That's why there's so much maintenance on there. SB1 coming up, we got to make sure the county takes care of those funds and they stay in for road improvement. They have a history of taking funds that are earmarked, like 172 for public safety, putting it in a budget. We lost $25 million over the last 25 years to go to public safety, fire departments, police, or sheriff, and we don't have those there. The other thing is the internet. Here we put the broadband out, and I've been doing research on that. And when the contract came in through AT&T, they got $9.4 billion to put broadband through, but they were never given a megabytes list. Well, it's coming through. We're going to get it, but we're going to get the minimum. We're going to get 10 megabytes. That's all they're putting in. That's all they were contracted for. The county 6 years ago had an opportunity to hold them ransom because they went in and said, hey, we need to find the easiest way to get our broadband and get our fiber optics through the county. Can we use your roads? And the county and the supervisor said yes. We could have held them for ransom. We could have got a lot faster internet. It's a fiber optic cable. It's speed of light. So you can put as much light as you want. It's like walking in your kitchen to a 10-watt light bulb or a 100-watt light bulb. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is John Haschak, to be followed by John Pinchas.
All right. Thank you all for coming out this afternoon. Advocacy, experience, and integrity is what I've stood for my whole life. You know, I will not be outworked as a supervisor. I will give it my best every day, working on behalf of the people and listening to the people. I think that's the critical element that's missing these days from our supervisors. We've had fiascos such as Grist Creek, the Hack and Squirt, the library consolidation plans, because the supervisors are not listening. I will listen to you. I've been endorsed by, and I'm very proud of this, I've been endorsed by Madge Strong, our mayor, Ron Orenstein on the Willits City Council. I've been endorsed by my principal, the superintendent of schools, Mark Westerberg. I've been endorsed by the state superintendent, Tom Torlikson, Paul Titchenen, former county superintendent. I've also been endorsed by all the members of the Brook Trails Board because they know that I'll work hard and getting that second access route and safety for our communities. I've been endorsed by the Mendocino County Democratic Party, the Inland Democratic Party, the SEIU 1021, which represents the county workers, 2015, which represents the in-home healthcare workers, the North Bay Labor Council. I've got these endorsements because these people know that I will get up every morning, work hard, and listen to you. I ask for your support. John Haschak for supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is John Pinchas, to be followed by Susie.
Thank you. First of all, most endorsements are nothing more than special interests wanting to your vote a certain way. My campaign throughout my political history, we've never taken more than $49 from any business, individual, corporation, period. That way, your vote is real and it's for the people and not for special interests. I've been on the board for 12 years. Everybody knows my record has been for infrastructure and helping families, and I'll continue it. And I'm going to keep this short and sweet, but I want to say one thing. On my worst day, I will be your best supervisor. There's going to be a lot of tough decisions to be made in the next 4 years. I want to be part of it representing the 3rd District. Thank you.
Next is Susie, to be followed by Cindy.
It's been really invigorating, enlivening, and exciting to be part of this group and part of the resurgence in political energy in our county overall. It's one of the ways I've been seeing it is in all the little cannabis groups that I've been speaking with and in front of over these last few months. I've been very impressed by the level of organization that people have managed to come up to bring themselves up to after many years of that not happening at all. And this is a new force for politics in our county as well. Make no mistake about it. There's a lot of young people that are becoming pretty woke about local politics. So it's really going to be an inconvenient time to sit in office because of all these new voices, but yay democracy. I'd like to say that there's a lot of really good leadership at this table, but not all leaders know how to lead in several directions at once. But I'm somebody, because of my personal experience in business, in producing live events, and in living in a collective life, a life of consensus. That's a skill that I have very well developed. This is not a career path for me. This is a path of service for me. And I would not think of seeking re-election because I would like to enjoy my grandkids. But I really would like to give you 4 years. And if you would like me to represent you, I will give it all I got. And I really think I could do some good work on behalf of the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Cindy, to be followed by Shauna.
Okay, I've done a lot of community work. Not a politician, don't have people endorsing me because I've been too busy working for my communities than to go out and get endorsements. I work for people, I work for building my community. That's what I do. I mean, basically, what I've already done should say what I can do and what I am doing, and the education and the experience I have behind me. And I ask people to please remember, your vote is not set until you actually cast it. And I know I have not really come on strong as far as my candidacy until recently, but I've been working really hard for another government right now, and I'm looking forward that I'll be done with that one in December because I told them I'd give them a year to put their programs together, and I'll be fully capable and willing and able to be your supervisor, full-time plus. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Shauna, to be followed by Pam, and then we'll finish with Tony.
All right, thank you for coming out. I'm just going to take a few of your minutes, and then we'll all be out of here. What distinguishes me as a candidate, not only that I'm a mother, and I think nothing is stronger than the strength of a mother, but that I also have skills in diplomacy as well as networking. So one of the examples is that I've been promoting 3D printing for Mendocino County, and I spoke with another teacher, the construction teacher at the high school, and said, if I get this for Mendocino County, are you on board? Will you have students build housing for teachers and housing for homeless? And he said, yes, 100%. So like Cindy, I'm behind the scenes teaching the lifeguard classes, you know, working on economic development through printing 3D housing, involving the school with it. And I do want to say today, I found out as I arrived here that I did get a really special endorsement. So there are some endorsements that are just special interests, but there's a few endorsements that I hold dear to my heart. And my sister let me know that I got the Ukiah Daily Journal endorsement. So my heart is full. And I also have the endorsement of a high school student that's very dear to me. Bear Wright wrote a really sweet statement on my webpage. So I do have a few really special endorsements that I hold dear. And with that, I'd just like to close by saying that your voice is visible, and I hope you all do your homework, make a good choice when you go to the polls on June 5th. And I had one person ask me how I'm going to handle the stress of the job, and I like to say I have a consistent yoga practice. So I can handle being a mom, having a job, having a life. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Pam.
I've been demonstrating for peace, jobs, and justice since I was 18 years old. I've been campaigning for office as an environmental healing consultant since 1986. My endorsement would be poverty-stricken people, and most of them don't vote. You can see all of my views on Pam Elizondo running for Mendocino County Board of District 3. I'm getting confused, it's been so long. And on Channel 3 and Vimeo. And the reason that everybody should vote for me is because giving everybody a job, particularly my endorsement people, will make it so that your taxes are going to be a lot less, and there's going to be a lot more taxes all around the state, essentially, for following my beliefs. Thank you all.
Thank you. And finally, Tony?
So you can find more about me on Tony Tucker for 3rd District Supervisor on Facebook. You'll find out a little bit of my background, where I come from, where my thought process is. You could read the papers that have done numerous interviews with all of us. You can go to MendocinoVoice.com and see the videos of our personal interviews. There is a whole outlet of information for you to get more information on where we're each coming from and what we think. I was asked last week after a forum to move to Willits and run for Willits City Council so I can get some experience under my belt. Shauna and I are the youngest candidates here, and that doesn't mean a single thing. When I was 21 years old, I was on an aircraft carrier for the United States Navy. I had one earphone where I listened to my crew. I had another earphone where I had aircraft, other ships of the battle group talking to me, and I had a radar screen that I had to be totally aware of all the time. So talk about multitasking. I am capable, very capable. I have only improved on that in the last 20 years. So we need to be cognizant of what we can offer to each other and how we can do that. It isn't just about 30 years of experience or this or that. I've been on school boards for 5 years. I was on the Covelo-Suver District for 8 years, so I know how to do budgets. I know how to study stuff. I know how to look into stuff. I just graduated last year from Mendocino College, so my mind works well.
Thank you. So, 2 closing notes. Cast your vote in the June 5th election. Talk about these issues with other people. Get other people to make sure to vote. Make sure we have a great voter turnout. Let's get the best representation that we can and that we deserve.